Come on, campers, let's get a move on. Welcome to Story Lab. This week, we're taking a look at the story of someone we want to follow really closely. Come on, let's go! Early snack break?
Told me to bring a banana. Oh.
Hey, I'm Skylar.
And I'm Sebastian.
This summer, we're talking about what it looks like to live like Jesus.
And we're getting ready to help with STEAM Camp.
Just practicing.
To be clear, this is not STEAM Train Camp. STEAM Camp is all about science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
So many amazingly awesome activities to set up.
I mean, with all this awesomeness to come, I feel like we should look a little more awesome.
What'd you have in mind?
Well, what's a camp without tie-dye shirts?
I see your tie-dye. I raise you, ice dye.
What? Let's make it.
For today's experiment, we're creating extraordinary shirts.
Using ice.
Step 1, soak a clean shirt in water, then wring out all of the water.
Which we've already done.
Which brings us to step 2. Place your shirt on a wire rack, then scrunch it up into a tight mound.
Super tight.
Then use rubber bands to keep it in place. Don't even think about it.
Okay, step 3, cover your shirt completely with ice. This ice is pretty cold.
It's frozen water. What do you expect? Now is the fun part. Step 4, sprinkle different colored dyes over the ice in any pattern you want.
But unless you want a muddy looking shirt, try not to layer colors.
Like blue and orange.
Or purple and yellow. Okay, so now what?
Step 5, set the shirt over a tub and let the ice melt. As it melts, it will transfer the dye to the shirt in really cool patterns.
All the excitement of watching paint dry.
If the ice melts fast, then the shirt needs to be sealed in a plastic bag for about 6 to 8 hours.
Hours? Well, I guess that gives us plenty of time for
The story before the story.
Today we're in the book of Philippians.
the Apostle Paul visited Philippi following a vision from God.
There, Paul started a brand new church.
Paul and his friend Silas were thrown into prison for talking about Jesus, but freed after God sent an earthquake.
Though Paul left the city soon after, the Philippian church continued to support him,
Later, while imprisoned again, Paul sent them a letter.
which is where our story starts.
Take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm Padma. Paul wrote his letter to the Philippians because he had a deep desire to see them become even more like Jesus. Paul gave the Philippians this incredible wisdom for how to treat each other.
As you deal with one another, you should think and act as Jesus did.
As you deal with one another, you should think and act as Jesus did. Wow. Paul said that our work is to think what Jesus would think and do what Jesus would do. I mean, where do we even start with such an epic quest? Paul went on to explain.
In his very nature, he was God. Jesus was equal with God, but Jesus didn't take advantage of that fact. Instead, he made himself nothing. He did this by taking on the nature of a servant. He was made just like human beings. He appeared as a man.
Think about it. Jesus is God's son. And with every bit of God's power, God created everything from the farthest galaxies to the tiniest microbe, all through Jesus. Paul wrote in Colossians that Jesus actually holds everything together. Mind blown. But Jesus chose to set all of that aside to take on the limits of a human being. He chose to walk hundreds of miles from town to town on his own sore feet. Jesus chose to get hungry and thirsty, to become exhausted after long days of clamoring crowds, to be misunderstood and face ridicule. Jesus humbled himself. He put others, everyone, ahead of his own needs and wants. Paul wrote,
He was humble and obeyed God completely. He did this even though it led to his death. Even worse, he died on a cross.
Jesus gave up his own life to take the consequences of our sin, of the wrong things that we've done. And when Jesus returned to life, he made it possible for us to be restored to relationship and live forever with God. Whew! With all of that in mind, living like Jesus can seem, well, impossible. You promise yourself that today is the day you won't fight with your sibling, but then,
I can't believe you did that.
yeah, we all know how that goes. But here's the amazing thing. God knows that we can't just try harder and automatically and think and act like Jesus. Learning to live like Jesus takes a lifetime, but you can start or restart the journey anytime. The first step is simply to choose to follow Jesus, to tell God that you want to turn away from living for yourself and start living like Jesus. But you can't live like Jesus until you know Jesus. That means spending time with him. The best place to start is by discovering the amazing things Jesus did. You can read or listen to the stories of Jesus' life in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You can also spend time with Jesus simply by taking a few minutes each day to sit quietly, breathe deep, and ask Jesus to be with you and talk with you. You probably won't hear an out loud voice, but Jesus may give you a sense of peace or a picture or even a verse or phrase. Not sure if what you just heard is Jesus? Well, if it's wiser or kinder than what you would usually do, it's probably Jesus. You can also spend time with Jesus when you gather with friends who love him too. Jesus said that when people are gathered together, talking and thinking about him, he's there in a special way. When you spend time with Jesus, you won't have to try harder to act like him. Instead, over time, you will become more and more like Jesus on the inside. As you allow God's Spirit to work through you, it will become easier and more natural to act like Jesus as you respond to others. You'll become more peaceful, encouraging, accepting, forgiving, and caring. And little by little, you'll start to live like Jesus, just as Paul reminded the Philippians. As you deal with one another, you should think and act as Jesus did. The end.
That totally reminds me of this bracelet my mom had back in high school.
WWJD?
It stands for, What Would Jesus Do?
Well, it may be old school, but it's not a bad place to start.
So, what's our part in the story?
Our part is super simple, but definitely not super easy. Live like Jesus.
So, what would Jesus do?
The answer to that question is always love God and love others.
But that can look different in every situation.
That's true. That's why it's so important for us to start by getting to know Jesus and spending time with him. You know what happens when you start hanging out with someone a lot?
Oh, you start to say the same stuff.
You might start to like the same things or even get the same ideas.
Exactly. That's what happens when you spend time getting to know Jesus. You start to think and act more like Jesus.
And you don't have to do it on your own.
That's right. When we stay connected to Jesus, God can actually work inside of us to change the world around us.
Sounds like a win-win to me.
Me too.
Me three.
You did not just say that.
For real.
See you next time.
So here's the thing. Live like Jesus.
The more time you spend with Jesus, the more God can work through you.
To color the world around you.
Speaking of color, are the shirts done yet?
Not even close. But the ones I did yesterday are finished.
These are incredible.
I suddenly feel like eating rainbow sherbet.
Camp mode activated.
Thanks for joining us in the Story Lab.
See you next time.
Do you want to ice dye some bandanas too?
Of course. Let's go.